Today's topic, electoral bond and political funding. That word, those two words are missing. I consider them as very, very important because electoral bond is an attempt to do this political funding, and political funding is the most important thing to cleanse democracy. If you want to have a clean democracy, you should have a clean political funding. Here is Prof.Trilochan Sastry, who founded Association for Democratic Reforms, group put together 1,200 associations to make democracy immortal. And his fight for creating level playing field, I think it is extraordinary. And this is the man who is here. He is Dean IIM Bangalore, Indian Institute of Management Bangalore. And he has worked at IIM Ahmedabad also. He is a PhD from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, USA. And he has lots of degrees. Here is one who is using it more for public causes. He is founder secretary of Center for Collective Development, CCD, since 2004. What is its job? Promoting cooperative societies in dryland areas, helping farmers, strengthening them. The second is an organization called Farm Veda, promoting agriculture and the farmers' interest, all profits to farmers. This is the purpose of Farm Veda. And the ADR, Association for Democratic Reforms, since 2002 December. So 22-year-old institution this is, filed many public interest litigations with their own money. They have fought cases and they have succeeded in disciplining our democracy and parties considerably. And the latest is the electoral bond decision of the Supreme Court declaring it as unconstitutional. It's a product of their effort. And you know, for this work of ADR, 4 national awards has been won by ADR. CNN IBN Award, NDTV Award, Times of India Award, and even President of India has given an award to these people for promoting a democracy. He has brought out a book on essentials of Hinduism, Penguin. First edition is sold out. Second edition is coming out. Many research papers in international journals. Visiting professor at MIT, US, International University, Japan, Hong Kong University, and many other. And he has won many awards. Best Young Teacher Award, Outstanding Contribution to National Development. This is an award. You can imagine. I don't want to explain anything more. And another thing, Young Global Leader Award by World Economic Forum. World Economic Forum has given this award. Hearty welcome to you on behalf of MOF and all of us. We are eager to hear you, sir. Please.
Thank you, Professor Umhapati, for a very kind introduction. I will just stick to the topic because all of you are well informed and you probably already know a lot about electoral bonds. So maybe it will be interesting to talk about things that are not known in the public domain. So can we just go to the next slide? So what are electoral bonds? I think everybody knows, but just for the record, they are in the nature of what they call promissory notes or bearer bonds. So this is a promissory note which the Reserve Bank of India issues and says, I promise to pay the... under the law, only the Reserve Bank of India is authorized to issue such bonds. But the electoral bonds were also issued in the nature of promissory and bearer bonds. And the Reserve Bank of India publicly, in writing, wrote to the government before the scheme was introduced, saying that this is not correct, it should not be done. Now, what was the reasons given by the government for introducing this? So there is a public reason that the government gave, and then there is reasons which they stated in court. So the public reason was that it will increase transparency of electoral funding. In private means in the Supreme Court, the Attorney General gave a statement that the primary purpose of electoral bonds was to maintain donor secrecy. So on the public front, they are saying they are going to promote transparency, but privately they were saying it is for donor secrecy. Second thing they said is that it will remove black money. So these were the reasons that the government had introduced the electoral bond. And then why did we challenge it? We challenged it on the simple ground that it is not transparent. Because under the electoral bond scheme, anybody can go and buy an electoral bond and then donate it to a political party, but the public shall not know who bought an electoral bond and who received that electoral bond. It will be completely secret. Now, this goes against the spirit of democracy and best international practice and even earlier practice in India, where the voter has a right to know who is funding how much to whom. So that principle was removed in the electoral bonds. That's the principal reason we challenged it in the Supreme Court. And there are some related questions, and maybe some of you will also give some comments. So they are saying now there is a big thing going on in the media that now that electoral bonds are struck down, black money will increase. So let me state some facts upfront before we lose track of this point. In 2018, January 2nd, they introduced the electoral bonds. In 2000, and with the stated purpose of removing black money. In 2019, during the elections, there was a record seizure of cash. A record seizure of cash more than in any other election in Indian history. So electoral bonds clearly did not help to remove black money. The Election Commission of India, appointed by this very same government, again stated in writing to the government, before the electoral bond scheme was introduced, they said in writing that it will increase black money. So we are living in a strange world where what the government says publicly, repeatedly, is taken by a lot of people as the truth, whereas actually the truth is exactly the opposite. Because the Election Commission has said that it will increase black money, and more black money was seized in 2019 than ever before in history. So electoral bond did not remove black money. But this kind of rumor or whatever thing is there that now we'll go back to some old rotten system which we were there from 1947, and India was ruined from 1947 till the electoral bond scheme was introduced, and now we're going to go back to that old rotten scheme of black money. It's not true. It's just a public sort of thing that they say. Then what kind of reforms do we need for this that we will keep to the end if time permits? Sir, can we move on to the next? Thank you. Yeah, so this, I think we are a highly educated group here, so I will spend a few minutes to get into the legal issues. I know some of you may be lawyers, I'm not a lawyer. How was this introduced legally? So the electoral bond scheme amended 4 laws. The Reserve Bank of India Act 1934, the Income Tax 1951, the Income Tax Act 1961, the Representation of People Act 1951, and the Companies Act 2013. 4 laws were amended to introduce the electoral bonds. The second thing that happened is all these 4 laws have been struck down as unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. The way a law is passed is that it has to be passed in the Lok Sabha and then in the Rajya Sabha. Now they did not have a majority in the Rajya Sabha, so they passed it in the Lok Sabha. Now how to steer it through the Lok Sabha, to the Rajya Sabha? They introduced these 4 amendments through the Finance Act 2017. Now the Finance Act is usually used to pass a budget or something, and within that Finance Act there is a provision called a money bill. So they passed it as a money bill. Now a money bill is not voted in the Rajya Sabha. The Rajya Sabha can give recommendations, they can be taken on record, and the bill is considered passed. So since the Rajya Sabha would not be allowed to vote, they passed it as a money bill. We also challenged that why has it been put as a money bill, because Article 110 of the Constitution of India defines what a money bill is. A money bill has to go through 4 tests. It should be either an issue which has tax implications. It should be something, some amount of, some issue where the central government gives a sovereign guarantee. That is also not applicable here. It should be something to do with the contingency or fund of India or the consolidated fund of India. So we said that none of these things are applicable in the electoral bonds. How come it was passed as a money bill? Now we have some archaic procedure that the Speaker of the House, and in the Speaker of the House in the Rajya Sabha is the Vice President of India, who is a lawyer, and he has publicly said that Parliament should, whatever passes, should not be subject to judicial review. There is considered view as Vice President of India is that Supreme Court should not look into laws which are passed by the Parliament. No, for such profound wisdom, he was made the Vice President of India. And he, in his further wisdom, he has the authority to decide whether something is a money bill or not. So he said this is a money bill. Now a 7-judge bench is going into this issue. There were 2-3 other matters which were sneaked in through as money bill. So now a 7-judge constitutional bench is looking into the issue of what is a money bill. Meanwhile, the electoral bonds has been scrapped. So can we just move ahead a little bit? So nothing remains sacred in India. The constitution and the laws are playthings in the hands of those who are powerful to do, it seems, apparently whatever they feel like. Now, why electoral bonds? Let me give you a background which is not known in public domain. In 2006, we, through ADR, we started looking at the issue of transparency of public funding. As Professor Umapati also said, we also feel that it's a very, very important issue. So after, it took us nearly 3-4 years, first appeal, second appeal, they take their own time. This directed the Income Tax Department to make public the audited financial statements of political parties. Before that, it was fiercely resisted by the Income Tax Department itself, by the political parties, of course. So once we got this judgment, we started getting the audited financial statements of the political parties and analyzing them. So we found that while they are stating that they have got so much money, at least on paper, nobody knows where that money is coming from. So we again went back to the Central Information Commission and said that we want to know where this money is coming from. This is before electoral bonds. And in its wisdom, the Central Information Commission declared political parties as a public authority. This is a slightly technical term under the RTI Act, Right to Information Act. If some organization is declared as a public authority, then it comes under the Right to Information Act and it has to provide information to the public. So they declared it as a public authority. So the political parties refused to follow that. They did not appoint information officers, nothing. They said, we don't. It is a Central Information Commission appointed by the government, which is a quasi-judicial body, and it gives a judgment, and the political parties say, we will not follow it. So we went back to the Central Information Commission. They said, we stand by our judgment, but we can't do anything. We don't have power to take action against the political parties on contempt. So we went to the Supreme Court. So the matter is still there in the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, the Election Commission started asking more questions from political parties, because once this information was this thing, more granular information about the source of funding. So pressure was building up on the political parties that their money is going to become more and more open, where it is coming from. That was the background under which this electoral bond scheme was launched. So This is a big issue because Tony Blair apparently, after he stepped down, he said the biggest blunder he made was passing the Freedom of Information Act in the UK. So there is something about the nature of power which does not like transparency. One of my dear friends who later on became a politician, he was a right to information activist. Then when we started all this, he used to meet us. We used to say that you don't need a law. Why don't you just make everything transparent? He said, no, that time I was in the NGO sector. Now I'm in politics. I cannot do such a thing. So there is something about the nature of power. I have never been powerful, so I cannot say, but that's how it is. So that's what, this is what, and this is a stated, Gobelian statement of the government. The last one you can read. In the absence of electoral bonds, donors would have no option but to donate by cash after siphoning off money from their businesses. I mean, this is complete gobbledygook and nonsense, because from 1947, a provision has been there and it still exists. It existed during electoral bonds, it existed before electoral bonds, and it exists today. Anybody here can just write a check and send it to a political party. That option of making donations, white money, has always existed. But they are saying that without electoral bonds, people will be siphoning off money from their businesses. So this is all, the public management of perception by repeatedly telling lies. Some governments, they master this thing. And unfortunately, the public doesn't have time or effort to sift through the facts. Many of them just simply swallow. Om, Swaha, we go on swallowing all these things. So let us go on further. Now, we said it would not promote democracy because of lack of transparency, and the information was important in a democracy. Now, many learned people here and some young people also, to whom I would like to place some suggestions, because no organization, including ADR, can solve all the problems of our country. And it is also naive to think that the Supreme Court or the Election Commission or somebody will solve all the problems. More and more problems will be solved when more and more young people, some of them are sitting here, will start participating in democracy and taking action. With that motivation, I'm just mentioning a few things. All of us sitting here have a right to go to the Supreme Court under something called Article 32. So Article 32 of the Constitution says, if your fundamental right is violated, you can file a case in the Supreme Court saying my fundamental right has been violated. So what is the fundamental right that has been violated in this particular case? It is this Article 19(1)(a), which you might have read again and again. In the Constitution, it is technically called the freedom of expression. But right from 1950s or whenever our Constitution was adopted, it has been read that you can express yourself, that is give out information, only when the corollary that you can gather information. You cannot express yourself if you don't have any information. So to strengthen that freedom of expression, it is popularly called the right to information. You have to have information. And so that is what is popularly called, 19(1)(a) is called the right to information. So we said that this fundamental right of voters of this country to know how much money is being funded by whom, to which political party, is being violated, and therefore it should be struck down. So that was the legal part of the argument. Just as a juicy tidbit, our lawyers, they charged 0. And the SBI lawyer appearing online from the UK, I was told by the nephew of one of our friends here, who is a lawyer, that they charge 35 lakhs per sitting or some such number. 45 lakhs? Okay, 45 lakhs. So it was like a David and Goliath match where our lawyers were not only not charging fees, there are court fees and there are other expenses that also they were paying out of their own pocket because ADR is broke. We have no money, by the way. Nobody wants to fund us because they think that they will be harassed by the CBI or the IB or the ED or something if they fund ADR. So we are broke. We don't have money to pay salaries of our staff. I don't get salary, but we need money to run this. So this was the constitutional background under which we fought this case. Yeah, let's move on. I just want to mention a couple of things which are, tell you the real nature of the political system from inside. Yeah. So let me first get into the Reserve Bank of India Act. I don't know whether I'm following that sequence. So the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934 says that only the Reserve Bank of India shall have the right to issue promissory notes and bearer bonds, which is basically currency notes. It's okay. Yeah. Anyway, I'll leave this with you. You can. The Reserve Bank of India shall alone have the authority to do so. But the RBI Act was amended for the electoral bond scheme, and it said that the central government shall have the authority to authorize any scheduled bank, for example, State Bank of India, to issue such electoral bonds. Now, there are many problems with this. One is that the Reserve Bank of India, in case some of us don't know, is independent of the Government of India. The Government of India is one entity, the Reserve Bank is another entity, and around the world, the central banks of every country have been independent of either the government or the ruling party. And that's how it should be. So the government is not actually authorized to issue any currency notes. It's only the Reserve Bank. They have given themselves that power under the electoral bonds, and not through the RBI, but through a scheduled bank, which is the State Bank of India. So the RBI said in writing, because before this law was passed in the Lok Sabha, they asked for inputs from the Reserve Bank of India and from the Election Commission. The Reserve Bank of India said that this is diluting the powers of the Reserve Bank. It is going to reduce the confidence of international money markets on the Reserve Bank of India. This is a bad step and it should not be done. And they also said that there is a long trail between the person who buys the electoral bond till it finally is encashed, and this is against the provisions of the PMLA, a much misused act, Prevention of Money Laundering Act, under which many people are now in jail. But the Reserve Bank said that the government is actually could be guilty of transgression under the PMLA if they introduce the electoral bonds. Now, what did the government do? In royal disdain, they ignored the Reserve Bank. We must recall that this is the same Reserve Bank governor who was carefully appointed by the Prime Minister. It is not a Reserve Bank governor who came from America and who is anti-national or anything like that. This was a Reserve Bank person who was appointed by this government. So even they felt constrained to say that this is not a good thing. Now, they also asked the Election Commission of India, what do they feel? Election Commission has also stated in writing. Both these things which I am quoting have been also quoted by the Supreme Court in its judgment, which is available. You can read the judgment, 230. Very brilliantly argued. My respect for the Supreme Court and particularly the Chief Justice has gone up, because the way it has been written with such nuanced arguments, at least somebody out there has got some intelligence. We are happy to see that in the Supreme Court. So the Election Commission also was asked. The Election Commission said two things. One is that the Representation of People Act was going to be amended, and it said that political parties need not keep account of the electoral bonds in terms of they can only keep the total money they received, but who gave, they need not keep that. Now, under the Representation of People Act, the Election Commission has the powers to monitor funding of political parties, particularly if they are coming either from foreign sources, because foreign money in political funding is banned by law. And number two, the possibility of funding by public sector units. there is a thing which is popularly called the PM Don't Care Fund. I call it the PM Don't Care Fund. It's a black hole into which all the money goes, and they say that we are not subject to the RTI. So any electoral bonds which are not redeemed goes into that black hole called the PM Don't Care Fund. A few 100 crores have gone into that. Now, the Election Commission said in writing that it will increase the possibility of black money because we cannot make out where this money is coming into the political party. Is it coming from foreign sources? Is it coming from black money? Is it coming from public sector unit? So this is against the provisions of the RP Act, and therefore it is a retrograde step and it should not be done. So again, for public information, the Election Commission of India is not part of the Government of India. There are some 4 or 5 constitutionally independent bodies in India. One is, of course, the government itself, the Supreme Court, another independent constitutional body, the Election Commission, the CAG, the Comptroller and Accountant General, so Comptroller and Auditor General of India. So there are 4 or 5 such institutions which are constitutionally independent of each other. So the Election Commission also has given in writing that this is a bad thing and it should not be done. Again, in royal disdain, they ignored the Election Commission and they introduced it. So shall we go ahead? Yeah, so these are the RBI. So this is what the RBI said, that it would have an adverse impact on public perception about the scheme as the credibility of India's financial system in general and the central bank in particular. How can you, I mean, something has to be sacred. Everything need not be about God, you know. The Reserve Bank is a sacred institution. You cannot use it as a play tool of politics. Nothing is sacred. Kuch bhi chalega is what this government has done. This is, in my opinion, it is immoral and anti-national to play around with the Reserve Bank. Because the health of the nation, the economic health and the financial health of the nation depends on an independent and professionally run Reserve Bank. You cannot do such things. So nothing is sacred anymore. So that's what they're doing. And in response, the Finance Ministry said, which was completely opposite of what they were saying in public. This is what they said in the core purpose of the electoral bonds is to keep the identity of the donor secret. So this is what it is. So let us move on. So this I have already mentioned, that this this is what the Election Commission, political party received donations in violation of certain section of the RP Act, which prohibits political parties from donations from government companies or foreign sources. So this is that we cannot find out this. Election Commission is saying under the electoral bond scheme we will not be able to find out if these laws are being violated, and therefore we should not introduce this law. That is what they have given in writing. Let's move on. Yeah, this is, you see, even today on TV we are constantly asked that you have ruined the whole system by getting the electoral bonds. Supreme Court has overstepped its limits and now black money is going to increase. What did the Election Commission of India say even before? That it would increase the use of black money. See, we are living in a Goebbelian world where black is white, white is black, day is night, night is day. Anything can be said, and unfortunately our public believes anything that is said. Some strange, some collective amnesia is going on in our country where we are taking lies as facts. This is what the Election Commission has said. It is there in writing, it is there in the Supreme Court judgment, that electoral bond will increase black money. Public perception continues to say that now a rotten socialist system will come into play, which was always there since 1947. India is now back, is going to be ruined because of black money, because electoral bonds had removed black money. What kind of nonsense they are talking? Anyway, let's continue. So this is what it is. So the 5-judge bench of the Supreme Court unanimously struck this down as unconstitutional, and these are the orders that they have given. All the 4 amendments were struck down as unconstitutional. The Finance Act 2017 was struck down as unconstitutional. They issued orders to the State Bank of India that they shall immediately stop issuing electoral bonds. And they also said that whatever bonds have been issued, provide the full information. So there also a drama took place. You see, it seems that what they say, General Motors is America. State Bank of India is India's largest organization. It has 48 crore accounts. We don't have 48 crore households in India. So it is a venerable institution, a very valuable institution of this great country, the State Bank of India. It is India's largest bank. Now, what does it do in the electoral bond scheme? On February 15th, the Supreme Court said that by March 6th, you shall release information on the electoral bonds. They gave them 3 weeks' time. On March 4th, 2 days before, the State Bank of India, through its well-known lawyer who's living in the UK, I don't want to mention his name, whatever his name is, that fellow, he went to the court online and said that we need 3 more months. They first filed a petition on 4th. On 7th, the day after the deadline expired, we filed a contempt petition in the Supreme Court. For those of you who don't know, that contempt petition means that if a Supreme Court order is not followed, then you are in contempt of the court. And the general principle has been that the head of the organization against whom that contempt is, which is the chairman of the State Bank of India, shall go to jail. So both these matters, the plea for extension of deadline and the contempt plea, were taken up on the following Monday, 11th of March, and they heard Mr. whatever that UK lawyer's name is, and then immediately in open court they said that you shall give it by tomorrow, not even any day, by 12th of March you shall give it. So they jolly well gave it, and in a thing which I find little embarrassing because I respect the State Bank of India, they said that this affidavit has to be filed under the signature of the chairman of the State Bank of India. They also said in open court that we are not inclined to take up the contempt petition, but if it is again flouted, that is tomorrow you don't give it, we will have no option but to take up the contempt. So next day they gave it. Now when they gave it, again they did not reveal the numbers. They only now there is a James Bond like thing there. No, literally it's like one of those spy films. The electoral bonds, when you see them, there is no number on it. But under ultraviolet there is a number. So we had pointed out to the court is aware of it. So they said you shall give the numbers of each and every electoral bond. They had no choice. Again, by Friday they gave it. So there was one list of all the electoral bonds issued with the numbers and the amount and who had bought it. There was a separate list of who had redeemed it, basically political parties, with the electoral bond numbers. For matching these two, they said they will require 3 months. Now they put it out on the Election Commission website at 5 p.m. on Friday. Within 5 hours, about dozens of analysts, including our own small team in ADR, we had matched the numbers. And they deliberately put it in PDF format because it became more difficult to do it. But now you can extract it from PDF and match. We were able to. For this job, the State Bank of India wanted 3 months. Now, I am little familiar with the banking system, not very familiar. All banks, including the State Bank of India, have the latest software. Every transaction, if you go and buy some vegetables on the road and pay through Google Pay, you will immediately get 49 rupees spent through that. And at the end of every day, the millions or crores of transactions that are taking place in the State Bank of India are reconciled every day. It is done through software. And they have the best available software today. How can they say that they cannot match these numbers? It's all gobbledygook. It's very unfortunate that a venerable institution like the State Bank of India should be stonewalling. The Supreme Court again told, final warning, that the State Bank of India chairman under his signature shall provide this information with electoral bond numbers, and he shall also state in the affidavit that he has no further information to withhold. All that information has been given. I mean, this is like a school teacher, chiding a naughty boy. This is how the Supreme Court had to deal with this chairman of the State Bank of India. Very unfortunate. Our institutions are not in good shape. So, this is what the issue of the electoral bonds is. I will close with something which people always are interested in, and Professor Umapati also mentioned, what next after the electoral bonds? So if you study the world over, one of the hot button topics for democracy is funding of political parties everywhere. So it is important in India, it is important in Europe, it is important in America, Japan, everywhere this political funding is very, very important. And different countries have dealt with it in different ways, and there's a lot to learn from it. And within India also, I'm not giving any original wisdom. 2 law commissions have gone into this subject. Our own Bangalorean former Justice, Chief Justice of India, M.N. Venkatachalaya, one of the most brilliant men that I have had the privilege of knowing, he was heading a constitutional review committee. They have gone into this question. The Election Commission, so there is more than enough recommendations on how to make this political party funding, proper. So there are 3 or 4 principles there which one has to think about, which are sort of more or less universal, and 2, 3 which are particular to India. So I'll start with the universal principles for political funding. One is transparency. World over it is transparent. We are now closer to transparency after the electoral bonds have been removed. Second is the principle of undue influence, which the Supreme Court in its judgment kept using the word quid pro quo. See, just to drive home the point a little dramatically, the market cap of Apple is $3 trillion. I don't know what $3 trillion means, but it is a little less than the GDP of India. Little less. Now, Apple can buy up the US Congress and the Senate several times over. They have got enough money to buy up the entire political system of the United States, but it is not allowed by law because of the very same reason, that if Apple buys up the US government, then what is the government then? So every country in the world has caps on funding by an individual or an organization. So in the US it is actually as low as $1,000. So there should be caps on who can fund how much. Those caps were removed in the electoral bond scheme. In the electoral bond schemes, they did something very, very bad. Under the Companies Act 2013, there is to be a limit of 7.5% of profit after tax, PAT. 7.5% is the maximum you can give away to political parties. That cap was removed. So IFB Agro, one of the publicly listed companies, not such a big thing, but they gave away they bought 92 crores of electoral bonds when its publicly stated profit after tax was 40 crores. Shareholders have no rights. What were the independent directors doing? Will any shareholder go to the court and say, why have you given away my profit to this? I don't know. We are not a very active citizen group in this country as yet. So the second principle is limits on funding. The third is closer to trying to achieve as far as possible a level playing field. So again, I think one of the gentlemen here, his nephew was on the panel with me, and he claims that it costs 50 crores to fight an election. Now, we can go on quibbling whether it is 50 crores or 5 crores or 2 crores or whatever. It is a huge amount of money. So I don't think anybody sitting in this room has that kind of money to waste and fight for elections. So spending limits is the way that the governments around the world say that you cannot spend more than a certain amount of money. So that's the third principle. So the first principle is transparency. Second principle is cap on the donations that an individual or organization give, and then spending limits. So these are some principles that have been followed around the world. The details and nuances can vary. But in India, there are 2-3 more things which are very troublesome. One is, of course, the sheer use of black money. Now, the Intelligence Bureau and the Income Tax Department and the ED, I'm sure they're very professional and they know who has got black money. They have to just go and seize it. They don't need all this cock and bull stories of electoral bond, this, that, catch your nose this way. All this nonsense to fool the public is not required. Everybody knows who has got black money. They have to just go and seize it. The black money will go. Second problem in India is the distribution of gifts. This is a very peculiarly Indian thing. One heard that in the 19th century in the United States, they used to pay $10 or $30 per vote, which adjusted for inflation is more or less what we are paying today in India per vote, So this bribing of voters, just for the record, is illegal. The Representation of People Act 1951 has a section called List of Corrupt Practices. The first corrupt practice is bribing of voters. It also mentions distributing food, money, liquor, clothes, etc., just to drive home the point, is banned during elections. So they have to enforce this. So, we used to have a privilege until a few years ago, of being able to go and meet the Election Commission of India because of the work that we had been doing. So I suggested to the Chief Election Commissioner then that you should countermand the election if money is being distributed. He became quiet and he said, "Sir, I'll have to countermand the elections in the entire country." And I said, "Sir, it is worth doing. Do it once to preserve Indian democracy. We need some hero out there in the Election Commission who can do it, because this is against the spirit of democracy." On the question of solutions, so this black money and this distribution of freebies has to be, of course, we are doing a little bit on voter awareness. So we try to tell people that if you sell your vote for 1,000 rupees, one sari, some liquor, some chicken, this and that, you will get bad roads, you will get bad schools, you will get bad health care. Your loss is hundreds of times more than the small gift you got. So don't sell your vote, etc. Actually, to become mature as a democracy, we should understand that democracy doesn't come free. We have to pay for it. So every citizen should pay, I'm just giving a number, once in 5 years pay 1,000 rupees to your favorite candidate or favorite. 95% of Indians can afford to pay 1,000 rupees once in 5 years. That's it. Just ban all this other, then they will be answerable to the people of India, not to some company here and there, which is, some gaming company, some gambling company. All these kind of companies have been donating money. This is not what a healthy society is. It is not there in any of the Hindu Shastras. I have not read any Hindu Shastra which says that the Raj Dharma is to encourage gambling and take money from gamblers in secret. It is not there in any of the Hindu scriptures. So why are we doing this? We have to take money from the people. The people of India have to say, I don't want your money. I like you. I will pay you 1,000 rupees. You please go and fight elections. So that is the maturity that we have to have. And then apart from crowdsourcing, many countries have a provision for public funding. It's a very contentious effort, because my dear colleague Jagdeep Chokar, he goes up in flames whenever somebody mentions that, because he says that these rascals are anyway spending black money, and now they will spend my taxpayers' money also by this public funding, so I don't want this to happen. But anyway, whatever it is, then what happens is that I'm sure there are at least 10, if not more, people here who are public-minded and more capable than the average MLA or MP sitting in various houses. But you cannot enter those because you don't have money. But if there is public funding, then maybe one of you will stand for election, maybe even win. So there should be some discussion on this public funding. So these are some ways of trying to solve the issue, because let us be very pragmatic. We cannot say that political parties do not need funding. Political parties need money. They cannot survive without money. So they need money, but we just need it to be regulated, open, transparent, level playing field, not undue influence, etc., etc. Maybe answerable, that money should come from the public, so they're answerable to the public rather than to a few corporate interests. All these things are there, but Indians have to understand slowly that democracy means we have to pay for it. It doesn't mean that it will come for free. So I'll just close with, Subhash Chandra Bose apparently said, I don't know Bengali very well, he used to say, Amake rakta dao, ami tumake mukti deve. Give me blood, I'll give you freedom. Now they're saying, Ami tumake taka deve, tumi amake vote dao. I will give you money, you give me vote. So it is become the opposite. It should be other way around. I will pay you money, you go and sit there and work for me. That is how the democracy has to change. So that is it, sir. Thank you so much.
Prof.Trilochan Sastry, who is involved in one of the most important tasks of our nation's reformation. We heard it from the horse's mouth. He is the petitioner in this case. So we are delighted, we are extremely privileged that you came all the way from Bangalore to talk to us. And we wish you all the very best in your future endeavors, sir. And we are grateful that you can, please do come whenever you achieve some more milestones in your activities.